Scopa has signed a memorandum of understanding with the Special Investigating Unit. The MOU aims to strengthen investigations into fruitless and wasteful expenditure of public funds. Now, Parliament's Public Accounts Committee will then be able to refer matters to the investigating unit. Now, the aim is to rule out corruption and maladministration. But for more on this, we are joined by Scopa Chair, Mr. Mkhuleko Hlengwa. Mr. Hlengwa, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I have so many questions, and I think let's just start off with what was it exactly that led to the deciding on this MOU needed to be signed between Scopa and SIU?
Thank you very much, Sister Lady. Good morning to you and the viewers. Well, at the outset, when we started out as a committee in 2019, we entered into what I can call a gentleman's agreement or arrangement with the SIU, recognizing the work that was before us and having tested some of the issues, and secondly, the legacy report of the Fifth Parliament collaboration with law enforcement agencies. Now, we then began work with the SIU, and it, amongst others, when we were gauging the extent to which SIU reports were gaining traction or lack thereof in government departments and entities, we realized that there was a problem because in large part, the SIU does investigations on the basis of proclamations by the presidency, which therefore means once an investigation is done, that report goes back to the presidency. But the presidency doesn't have an implementation protocol in terms of once it's received this report, what does it do with it? So we've got SIU reports gathering dust since 2001 in the presidency. So in working with the SIU, we then engage the presidency, and I'm happy to say we are making progress in developing that reporting matrix. We met last week again with the minister in the presidency and the DDG responsible for this work, and that is moving. And so we're going to see a quicker turnaround time in the implementation of SIU reports. On the stream of investigations, we recognized as a committee that in receiving the reports as the rules of Parliament dictate from the Auditor General of Audit Outcomes, once we are done with our work, there's certain aspects which require interventions of law enforcement agencies, which Parliament may not necessarily have the skills, knowledge, and expertise to deal with. And so part of the output mechanisms is then to formalize that gentleman's agreement we arrived at with the SIU in 2019. Already there were 3 matters we have already referred to the SIU. It's the National Skills Fund, it's issues around the prestige portfolio with the Department of Public Works, and on the allegations of the former GCEO of ESCOM. And so we believe that we are creating in the oversight and accountability value chain of Parliament by working with state institutions such as the AG as input and other issues, and the output going to law enforcement agencies. And in this case, we have preferred to work with the SIU, given the good work that they do and the healthy relationship that we have. So let me conclude by saying all the work that will be done will be within the parameters of the law for each party. So Scopa maintains its powers and functions, and the SIU maintains its own independence and mandate. There's no conflation of issues, so the law will be upheld. Because you'll also recall the SIU, because I think this is something that's lost in the public discourse, the SIU can also investigate on the basis of secondment, which may not necessarily mean then that you require a proclamation. And so we are tapping into that to ensure that investigations gain traction.
Yeah, you see, well, everything you've said is obviously quite technical, and you've done quite a good job of trying to explain how the relationship really works and the motivation of why this MOU was necessary. But I think what we need to do perhaps is have a little confidence-boosting exercise here where we say, well, why bring Scopa together as a portfolio committee that is supposed to oversee the work of the executive, where the executive accounts to a portfolio committee? And then what is the relationship of your portfolio committee, say, for instance, with the portfolio committee on justice and correctional services? Is this not a lack of confidence in the work of the Department of Justice, for instance, to oversee what the SIU does?
No. We're not overseeing what the SIU does. Secondly, we are a standing committee which may powers and functions are practically and definitively defined in the rules of Parliament, unlike portfolio committees, which are established on the basis of mirroring the department as and when how the president structures them. So we are outside the scope of portfolio committee work, and our role is clearly defined in the rules. Thirdly, the work that the SIU does with the portfolio committee is not going to be interrupted by what we are doing. All we are saying is that Parliament does not have the investigative capacity for the kind of technical work which may be required in some of the issues that we pick up. They will require forensic investigations. They will require freezing of accounts, working with the special tribunal, and the SIU has got those capabilities. Let me put it in a more blunt way.
Sure.
We are formalized Parliament being a whistleblower, saying to the SIU, as and when we pick up matters, we need to have a formal and structured way in which we refer those matters to you. So this is an administrative function. So when we conclude on hearings on matters that we have raised, what we will be doing is that the aspects that require further intervention of investigations, we will take that forward. Lastly, if the SIU in itself has to appear before the committee to account for its own matters, that will continue to take place. So it is not immune to parliamentary oversight, just like the AG is not immune to parliamentary oversight, because we receive reports from the AG, but if there's a matter pertaining to the AG, they still have to account. So the checks and balances are there to the extent to which the steering committee that we are establishing with the SIU is going to be one which will be handled by the committee secretariat and not the MPs on the committee, ensure that we maintain checks and balances which will uphold the integrity of the work and be able to allow MPs to continue engaging with the SIU without having due consideration of the other work that will be done. So all we are really saying is that there is a shortcoming or a lacuna in the processing of investigations and allegations in Parliament, because some of the issues are falling by the wayside because they are not landing at the SIU or law enforcement agency space. You'll recall that there's also the anti-corruption task team, which brings together all law enforcement agencies for the purposes of pooling and sharing resources. The SIU is part of that, and so we are trying to beef up on our side to ensure that what we do finds expression when investigations are required to, amongst others, recoveries to the state, ensuring successful prosecution, us sharing information which we may have, because we also receive information from the public which may be helpful for investigations, but what we don't want is an ad hoc arrangement on such serious matters.
Okay. And that's understandable. You're trying to deal with that ad hoc agreement that you think has been in place and trying to structure it. But how do we ensure? And ultimately, I ask this question because anyone who's watching this discussion wants to see the SIU do its work, particularly in the big, high-profile matters that we've been watching very closely. For instance, how does this MOU assist us in getting to the point where we're seeing prosecutions, for instance, against state capture identified individuals, for instance, particularly in our state-owned entities? Because it sounds to me like we can certainly have a big discussion around processes that our institutions are undertaking, but South Africans want to see results.
Yeah, but you see, it's also important that we highlight the fact that the SIU is not a prosecuting agency.
I understand that. It is a part of the process, however, yes.
So I'm meaning in the context then that the SIU in itself still needs to hand over information to the NPA. And so what the discussion we need to be having is, beyond this, is why is the NPA having such a slow pace of prosecuting matters? We remain fundamentally concerned about that. Also, you'll recall the SIU has begun making traction in the recoveries that are taking place, and amongst others, credit to this must be given to the establishment of the special tribunal. And as you have seen that on the Beitbridge matter, there was recoveries there. I mean, the SIU has made recoveries of some 3 billion rands already. And we believe that that is work that is going to get better over time as we build up the capabilities. On the issue of process, let me make one example.
Right.
You'll remember that there was that interview that the former GCEO of Eskom actually had with one of the TV stations. Excuse me. Now, he made allegations there which we are busy with, and the committee report is going to be debated and processed on the 19th of March as we concluded. But I want to make 2 points about it.
Sure.
One is that nobody was able to find Mr. Director, but we did, and he appeared before the committee.
Yes.
He made allegations which opened the door for us to be able to gain information, including the Fivers report, which was the basis of the allegations. We don't have the capabilities to deal as Parliament with the intricate stuff that is in there. But that report was now handed over to the SIU at our behest, and an investigation is taking place. So what it means is that we are creating an environment where it says we as a law enforcement committee of Parliament must be able to work with other law enforcement agencies while staying in our lane. And that means then the pooling and sharing of resources and information.
All right. Okay. I'll take it, and then I need to wrap it up. But let's talk about this. The 29th of May is coming up. We've got a new administration coming in after those general elections. Will this MOU still be standing? And also just the time frames that you're looking at, how long this MOU period lasts for, and some of the priorities that you've then put at the top of your list in what you'll be recommending to the SIU through this MOU.
Well, what we have put in the MOU is for the purposes of checks and balances, that the new Scopa will have 90 days to engage on the SIU, on the MOU with the SIU, and they can take it further. We believe that it's a solid foundation for oversight and accountability, and a mechanism that can still be utilized, because we have seen that ad hocly things work, and we are formalizing it. So we are not imposing this on them. We have already, as I've said, referred matters to the SIU, and I'm pretty certain that the outstanding reports of the committee that we still need to do around PRASA, Eskom, amongst others, will be making reference to issues which need to be handed over to the SIU. Finally, of course, is the infamous issue of the IFMS, and that matter is going to be serving in the committee in 2 weeks' time, where the Minister of Finance will be before us and other ministers in that space, and we will be handing over those matters. So there is a list of issues, but we are also cognizant of the fact that the Serbian Parliament may develop its own modus operandi, but the legacy report, which we will be finalizing as a committee, is going to strongly recommend that this arrangement be taken forward, and it is a demonstration of cooperation that can take place between Parliament and relevant institutions of state.
Yeah, and it remains to be seen if that recommendation will be taken forward as we get into that new administration post the 29 May general elections. Mr. Hlengwa, we do appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming to and speak to us and really explaining just what that relationship now is going to look like between SIU and Scopa. Mkhuleko Hlengwa is, of course, the Scopa chair.